the Neighborhood Planning Commission, and the Neighborhood Commission. First up, or I guess first we can have a roll call. You want it? Can you do it?
Yes, I can do it. I didn't practice last names beforehand, just for the more complicated one. Bernal,
Here,
did I say that correctly?
Burnell.
I was close.
Okay.
Elliot Pahinu,
Here.
Melendrez, Oshiro, Smith.
You didn't say that properly. No, I'm kidding. It's your hair.
Smite. Yeah, I was kidding. Ray
President.
and Yonanaka.
Here.
All right. We have 5 members present.
Thank you. So we have a quorum. Next up, we have a little, or public concern, sorry. Do we have any public concerns, any members of the public that wish to express them? We have one member of the public, so. Kevin?
He put in the chat that he is currently on the set of a television show,
Oh.
but he is monitoring with the closed captions.
Let him know that I do have a copy of his comments from last month,
Gotcha.
so,
Multitasking.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
thank
Just
you,
have a
Kevin.
Concern about the TV program. Thank you very much.
How do you find his comments on the video? Oh, I need to print them. Okay.
I
Okay.
think they were on your testimony.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna do the.
The Google Drive.
Okay. I'll go back.
So next is our approval of committee minutes. Sorry, from our January 13th meeting. Did everyone have a chance to look at those? Or is there any, does anyone wish to offer any amendments?
So moved, we accept the minutes as submitted.
Second. Thank you. All in favor?
I,
Okay. Any opposed? Thank you. Minutes are approved as distributed. Next up on our agenda is our discussion of the complaint provisions overview. And hopefully everyone got a chance to look at the actual proposal, the 3-page proposal from the commission.
mhm.
And then sort of this is just to pick up where we left off. And I did take a bunch of notes when we had our last meeting. So if I could go through that really quickly, go from there. So I think some of the things we had talked about, if you look at the proposal, it says if a board member files a complaint, it'll go on the agenda of that board meeting. Of that board for the next meeting.
Are you on page 1?
Yeah, on page 1.
Okay.
So I'm looking at, their proposals.
Okay.
Sort of what we developed, and I don't know if everybody was in agreement with this, but actually, rather than make it automatic, we talked about empowering the
Mhm.
executive secretary, and perhaps it could be a 4-part. Based upon various comments, we could either, the executive secretary could refer to the board, recommend to dismiss, which and then refer it directly to the commission itself. And then we didn't really, this was offered as a suggestion by a couple of people. We didn't really talk it through, and maybe have some kind of mediation of a couple, maybe the chair and if that's something that the executive secretary, but it would be your choice. If you don't want to do it, just never select that option.
I would be the executive secretary.
Well, the executive secretary can actually move, so this would be like a 4-point, 4 choices. So refer to board, dismiss, go to NCO, refer directly to NCO. So if it's like a more substantiated type thing, you just say, hey, this needs to really go. Or it could go to, let's call it mediation. It doesn't have to be you to do mediation, but just sort of like a conference. What I was going to ask Richard, I know he's not here, I hate to call him out, but is maybe the commission itself could appoint someone, someone volunteer to just be and maybe call it hearings officer or something. And that way, you could bounce it off a commission officer, and that way, there is like the commission would be involved. Would that be something you'd be comfortable with?
Yeah, I think the whole purpose from our perspective was how do we speed up the process?
And I think that would
That would be
really
the-
speed it up,
Yeah,
because then
and I
you could
agree.
just reach out to someone.
Because I just hate this, you got 45 days to
Mhm.
respond kind of deal. I just like crazy.
I think speed up the process and also put it to bed.
So
I'm
we,
glad you said that, not me.
maybe at the organizing meeting for a commission year, we could have, like
Yeah.
we have a vice chair and everything, we could ask for a volunteer for a hearings officer, and then, maybe an alternate if they go out of town. Or something. Yeah. Well, then Kathleen, please.
No, go ahead, finish.
Well, that was finished. It's just then Thomas.
Okay. Sorry, Tom. Under section 3-2-102, complaints initiated by a board member or the public. You have two different processes here. You have
Mhm.
one for the board member
Mhm.
to put it on a board practicable.
Right.
And I'm thinking of downtown neighborhood board and that lovely little hearing that I did. And if that complaint had gone onto their board agenda, there would probably be blood in the streets. I know, I'm absolutely, yeah. So I'm not, I hear what you're saying. It's good to have the board adjudicate the initial first step, but I think a lot also depends on the board.
And I don't disagree, and I think maybe it's not the board is making the decision. The board is just coming up with a recommendation for the commission. And if the recommendation is we have no recommendation, or we have a recommendation that was on, but nothing got passed, or it was passed 3-2, or whatever it is. The point is, I think it's important for that dialogue to at least start there. That if you have a problem with another board member, then run the table and let's, see if we can figure it out.
I gotta be honest with you, Lloyd, I appreciate where you guys are coming from, and I just, every time, and Tom can back me up on this, going back to the days of Eva, it would have been ugly. It would've been-
I'm gonna go with her.
Thank
Well,
you.
I got feeling right off the bat, I can see my board meeting and all that. I just disagree with that part of the process. Because all you gotta do is you can make it worse, and your cohesive board that you're trying to get to, you just made it worse and you bring in more negative discussions. This needs to be handled at a next level.
Well, I mean, if we go with this process that we give the, like I like to call it, empower the executive secretary, then,
Yes.
I mean, you can kind of get a sense of, especially if you talk to the NA, because I'm sure if you do these things and just say, yeah, this is not going to work at that board, and then you just pick a different solution or
Process.
Or you
different
talk to
take on
the
the
NA and the board chair and say, what do you guys think? Do you think this could? Do I think the board should know that the complaint has been filed? Absolutely. I absolutely think there should be transparency. The board should be aware of it. But I just.
And leave it at that.
Leave it at that.
before you move forward, Tom, why don't you jump in? please?
Okay, thanks. A couple of things. I'm not gonna worry about wordsmithing at all because I like the direction and stuff. But let me, most directly, I got many comments. The first one, let me just jump in with what you guys were just saying. I think it's very important upon further reflection, because this is different from when I first arrived this evening. And that is, I think looking at a couple of things in this first draft, I think it is very important that whoever the complainant is, and I'll address that separation in a moment, but whoever the complainant is, there should be only one process for intake. And that intake then is to the NCO. And then, again, I'm not getting into any details, but that the NCO then would review and determine whether that complaint should be referred to the board, the NCO itself, the neighborhood commission, and somewhere in there as well, Patrick, as you were just saying, even the potential of a mediation step, something else. Like
Yes.
that. Okay.
And then
And these things could come at slightly different points depending on the circumstances, okay? So that's that first comment is really, there should be that first point of intake, one portal only, okay, clear on that portion of the process to the NCO. The other thing, quick point, is looking at the draft at present. I have a great amount of confusion as to, and this is where some of the breakout needs to be, who is the complainant? If the complainant is a member of the public, that kind of needs to be spelled out in a section, so you're not mixing up apples and oranges.
Right.
If the complainant is a member of the board, well, that's a different little section. If the member, or the complainant is a member of the NCO, let's not forget that's a possibility, distinct from public, okay? Or if the complainant is a member of the neighborhood commission. Because there are different elements that need to be looked at, although of course the great majority of our aggravation is these vexatious complaints that occur at the board level and need to be there. Last quick comment for right now. I am greatly enamored with the idea from how this idea developed at the last meeting. I'm greatly enamored with the idea of, you know what? This problem developed at your level. You review it first, board. This is the community and the grassroots, whatever. You guys talk it out and try to resolve it. As compared to almost going a straight line to a contested case hearing, you know, kind of process. Okay, so let me stop there. But I think that separation out as to who's the complainant, but most importantly, one portal for intake in order to still keep that kind of administrative overview and everything else in the NCO. And I'm sorry, one last comment. I don't like and strongly recommend against use of the term hearing officer
Okay,
until you get into a very formal process.
yeah,
But that flexibility can be developed within the neighborhood commission office. And he's not here to defend himself. So I'll just say, if it were Dylan Whitson, it's an upper level member of the NCO, but not a hearing officer and not a mediator, to at least be part of that first review. Thanks.
well, what I was suggesting is the executive secretary or his designee, you know,
Right.
would be the person to get all the complaints. I mean, that would be the what we're talking about. Yeah, the hearing officer, I understand that has, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
We can
Don't
change that.
create the lightning
Yeah.
round.
I know there are terms of art,
Yeah.
that's a bad thing. But, you know, whatever we name it, you know, it could be just someone that, so for instance, like say, the executive secretary, whoever it is at that point, just says, hey, this is a frivolous complaint, we just need to dismiss. And they can just get on the phone, you know, to whoever, like Kathleen, and say, see, paper.
Hi there.
And then that way, it'll just be done, and maybe that person could do, now probably the executive session, but they could then report back to the commission and say, hey, we had this complaint. Here's basically a summation and we dismissed, and I mean, 99 times out of 100, you know, probably more than that, the commission will be like, yeah, that's fine. I mean, if they don't, problem, but that was sort of what I was saying. So.
Well, and sometimes it's a matter that we all experience this. Sometimes an individual just wants to be heard, especially if they're public. As coming, because board level kind of board member takes it to kind of different level already. But sometimes either that phone call or something else to flesh it out a little bit more can really de-energize it and move on.
So, Richard, just get you up to speed. We just talked about the new proposal and maybe have the executive
The 3
secretary.
pages we got last.
Yeah, have the executive secretary review it, and then they can either, I mean, this was sort of what we brainstormed, refer to the board, dismiss, refer directly to the commission for something more substantial. And then lastly, maybe do some sort of mediation conference. It doesn't have to be the executive secretary, but, you know, his designee, whatever. And so, that's just kind of where we're at. Were there any comments? Tom?
I've been trying to play these scenarios back in my head all the different ways. When you have a complaint against the chair, that's when you have a conflict of interest, when you send it back to the board. Because how's the chair going to? Well,
We just would never make the agenda.
neutral.
I just,
The
I
chair
just,
can't be neutral.
I just can't support the board sending it back to the board, especially if it's between board members. It's just, I've never seen it end well. And since 90% of the complaints we get usually are between board members, I think the ones in the public are usually the easy ones to resolve, like you said, Patrick, that a lot of times the chair can just talk to that person and say, hey, I'm really sorry about what happened, let's talk it through. And usually, like you said, Tom, they just want to be heard. But when it comes to the board stuff, we just see people just dig in their heels. They're convinced of their rightness no matter what, and I just don't see it. But I like the idea of separating the four areas of who can complain. And I think all you need there is just complaints initiated by A, B, C, and D. I
Right.
think that's easy.
And the other thing if I had to add, you don't want the problem, as a chair, you don't want that problem to fester even worse.
Yeah,
What you wanna do
absolutely.
Is you want to nip it in the bud and with the executive secretary and whoever from the commission is going to be there and just fix the problem. You know, and hopefully you get the person that filed the complaints is okay.
Now, perhaps, unless the chair is involved as the person, as Larry pointed out, in the complaint, but perhaps like if it's just between two other board members, the executive secretary could ask the chair to work with those two board members and see if you can resolve it. That's one way to do it.
Yeah.
And that's very low key outside of a board meeting. You just sit down and have coffee and hopefully resolve it. But again, if it's involved the chair, like sometimes it does, I don't know how the chair's going to do that.
And I think part of our training with our boards and with the board chairs, you know, when you do see conflict starting and all that, just don't let it go to the next meeting.
Absolutely.
Right after the meeting, get the two together and say, hey, before you guys leave tonight, let's sit up. What was this deal that you came up? And why did you call the point of order on that comment? You know, and just because the next meeting, then it gets worse. It's, hey, I told you last.
Investors, exactly.
Go ahead, Tom.
Different element, I appreciate what was just said. I think it's also important in providing this early opportunity to perhaps add another section in an appropriate place in terms of the duties of the chair or the duties of the board, in the sense of, for what we're talking about, designating the board chair, in essence, as that agent
They're just talking
of
about
the
general.
neighborhood commission
They're not
office.
talking specific.
And if the board
They're
chair
talking about
is
that.
the object of the complaint, then the vice chair or another officer, something like that. But what you're trying to then do is put the chair in that stated position of needing to follow up in what Kathy just said. Look, the chair can talk to these two members. It's a problem between the members. The chair in this case is talking as more than simply a member of that board. He's talking now more as an agent of the neighborhood commission office in this complaint process, whatever. So it is a slightly different hat at that moment. And the chair can just say, I'm obligated to do this. Are you guys willing to talk? Can we work this out or whatever? Then if not, please understand, it goes fully back to the neighborhood commission office and, good luck talking there, however you want to say it, right? In order to encourage those members to get together. But I think it's important to specify and distinguish that additional role that we're kind of creating for the board chair, because I think we all know instances in which the board chair would be the first to say, oh, there ain't no way I'm getting between those two members. This has been going on for decades between them, ain't me. But if in that role,
Yeah.
then at least he said, you guys willing to talk? Okay, because it's either me or, just go straight down and, come on, let's try to do this ourselves. Whatever.
I think it'll vary board to board.
Totally.
I mean, someone like Larry, just based on his demeanor and ability
I
to
just wanted
do
to
that.
respect each
Yeah,
other.
maybe you can pull it off, but I don't know about every board, and I agree with Kathleen about, you know, having boards having to set up complaint hearings and, you know, trying to address complaints at the board meetings, because can you imagine if Waikiki had to do that? As an example,
Yeah.
you know, they'd have complaints every meeting, have to deal with it. So
Yeah.
I don't know if,
Yeah, but see that problem, fester.
well, you know, it can vary from board to board. Sometimes they have a lot of problems with complaints. You know, some boards may have to do this all the time.
And
Well-
chairs gotta understand that they, you know, if they got a problem they can't handle, raise your hand and call the exec secretary.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't just let it go. Ask for help, guidance.
So let's clarify for the sake of the rules. We hear that we're not enthusiastic about turning it over to the boards in a lot of cases, but do you, I mean, is it in favor of the committee that they want to kind of preclude that as an option and say, let's just not even put it in as an option, or?
Well, I like what Tom said about, you know, designating the chair, you know, that role when you have it. And then it kind of goes a little bit to what you guys are talking about here, where it still is at the board level, but it's in a more private situation than a public forum, where the chair can then sit down and talk with his people and say, okay, well, you know, let's try and sort this out. So I do like that idea, because that's what I do anyway. That's what Larry does. We get in there, we take care of it, we talk to our board members. But making it an official would help, I think, other boards and other chairs who maybe don't have that,
Skill set.
yeah, thank
That's what it
you,
is.
Mahina, thank you.
Yeah.
Or,
Majority.
Or if they don't want to take that position.
and then if they don't want to, they don't have to, right? Then they could call up Lloyd and say, listen, I'm not comfortable doing this. Can you help me out? And that's like Larry said, call the NCO.
Well, and that's where the executive secretary can make, have that choice. of
Right.
What, how
Right,
he wants to
exactly.
handle it.
Yeah.
And, I'm assuming if he said, okay, well, this would be best to have the chair meet with whatever, and then the chair calls back, and says, no way, this is not gonna work, then you
Yeah.
could take a different route or, go back to the drawing board.
Can I ask, what do you see in all of this? What do you suggest? Because that's a lot. You
Larry,
have your
home.
hand, this entire office has their hands full all the time.
Yeah.
And that's more on you, but the process needs to be streamlined and more effective. But I just wanted to know your thoughts.
I think there are problems in the process, and it's not the process necessarily. I think there are people who will not work to resolve it, period.
Yeah.
That they're objective,
that.
Tom, you've been in my seat. There are times you talk to people and they, like, if I have a problem with Larry, I don't care, man, I'm gonna get you. Whatever way I can. And there's nothing about reasoning, okay, you need this, we do this. No. He's a bad guy, I don't like him.
Right,
know?
no.
And I think that is the problem for us, is that I can work down that pathway of the options and whatnot. That's not the issue, but I just know that I can tell you, if I would say, I'm gonna dismiss this because it's frivolous, in my opinion, what's the appeal process? One appeal. I mean, it's like, right off the bat. And then the next day, there's another complaint about somebody else. So, I mean, there are people that love to live in a world of
Chaos.
of filing and trying to manipulate, and sometimes you can reason and sometimes you just can't. And I think that's part of the challenge, is that, looking at some of the people I had to deal with, they just can't.
Then when that person files continuous complaints, it
Yeah.
affects the board. It can't be cohesive,
Right,
Yeah.
and that person needs to be removed.
right. And maybe that's what my view of all this stuff that we're talking about was, so how do we get to that last point where it's done? Either way, left or right, you're on, you're in, you're not. I mean, I just want to accelerate the process to the point where we can deal with it pretty quickly so the board can get back to what they want to do.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, the cases that require removals, you gotta come to.
right, right,
As
yeah.
quickly as possible. That's where drift is.
But even currently, you know, it comes to the commission, but we still have this long process of going through the hearings and wait for this person and wait for that person. So I think the first thing is we just wanted to see if we can shorten that.
Streamline.
I think that's what.
Well, Okay, go ahead.
Couple of quick things. I'm getting a real bad flashback. When we started this in '97, and as I've said before, we focused first on the complaint process. If I remember correctly, the shortest time period that, if you went the full process, the shortest time period at that point to complete this process was like 180
Oh
days
my God.
to 240. And you just looked at that list. It's
Exact.
absolutely contemplated to do nothing, right? So just a good bad flashback.
Oh my.
Two comments. The first is, one of the other things that I like about putting the chair, I'll say this badly, I apologize, putting the chair on the spot
Mm.
is also emphasizing, Chair, you are part of the neighborhood board system. Because I've dealt over the years in different capacities with strong personalities that their board, yeah, okay, fine, you know, we're board members, but we're our board and we answer to nobody else and whatever. And so this is an added component of emphasizing that your board is part of the neighborhood board system. And in fact, you, Chair, and your members, but you especially, have additional responsibilities as part of that. You are an elected official, blah, blah, blah. Okay. The other concern that I also have that we need to be mindful of is I never like to put the neighborhood assistant in the middle.
Right.
The neighborhood assistant is already in category multiple hats, blah, blah, blah. But in this case, it's also a matter of saying, all right, let's be very mindful about limiting what we're asking the board to consider to do, because they're not trying to set up a whole other hearing level in front of the board, whatever. This should be a quick in and out. Okay, talk it over with it and pass the recommendation. And not putting any of those burdens on the NA. Instead, you've got to deal with the NCO, not your NA that particular.
Mm.
Thanks.
So the ultimate response for me is, while there's all these scenarios, what if you take the complete process and just remove it? Then you can't file a complaint. There's no process for it.
Have to check state law again in that regard, because this is a formally created commission and board, or whatever. But I say, please ask Corporation Counsel.
Yeah, actually, you know,
Any way you
you
can
have to,
truncate it, the better.
because it does refer to the complaint process at state level. So
Yeah,
You've
it
gotta
doesn't
have
seem
a-
like a good idea.
Yeah, really,
You
They
always,
go straight to IP with their complaints.
yeah, but not everything's a sunshine law issue.
Correct.
I mean,
Right.
you know, that it's bad behavior. Got to
Mhm.
have some way of suspending people, you know, because otherwise, like chairs are going to run roughshod over a lot of boards if there's no complaint procedure. I don't see how you force
That's
people to
not
do
good
anything.
either. That's not good.
Yeah. I just-
So to Lloyd, to your point of somehow shortening that process, so just some off the top of my head crazy ideas. What if they only get one appeal per complaint? They don't get to keep going back to the well. I don't know right now what the appeal process is.
appeal, yeah, you only have one.
Okay,
basically.
you know, if you dismiss it, you know, one thing I've seen is a lot of these guys don't tie the complaint back to the plan. I'm assuming you just say, sorry, that's,
Well, they tie it in a very nebulous way.
and you have a way though to say, I'm sorry, this doesn't comply, sorry, and you just say, too bad, so sad. And I think maybe you get 3 bites at the apple, and after your third complaint, we're gonna start taking a close look at you, however that is, like we're saying removal. Because, like you said, there are just people who don't like people, and they're gonna do everything they can to be disruptive to that person. But at some point, you gotta put your foot down and just say, sorry, this is it. Do you wanna be on the board? Okay, if you have a serious, a real legitimate complaint, we'll listen to you, but this is it. You're not gonna do it. It's like 3 absences, you're out, maybe. 3 complaints, you stand to be removed.
Yeah, you could have a vexatious complainer, because, they have
And it's
vexatious
in-
litigation.
That's in the plan now.
It is, what does it say, Tom?
I don't want to dig for it, but no.
Oh, you don't want to dig
I
for
want to
it.
dig. Yeah, no, we added, I'll look for it. But we added it specifically because the commission needed the authority stated in the rules of commission. Okay, and for the complaints, et cetera, that, look, you can't simply abuse the complaint process.
Right.
If in the determination of the commission, not saying the office, but for the commission, if somebody is engaged in vexatious complaints, over and over and over again, and unfortunately, we have suspects, right? And the key is at a certain point, we close the door. Okay, that's not what this process is for. Okay, so those complaints can simply be dismissed out of here.
I think the only part I saw that was similar to that was that the executive secretary can send a complaint to the commission and with a recommendation to dismiss, because it was frivolous. It's in there. It's frivolous, but, I don't mind. It's me personally, as far as the input for the complaints coming through my office through me, I think that's fine. I don't have a problem. Again, as long as there's tools that I can deal with it quick. That was my biggest concern.
You have that tool now in a sense that frivolous complaints, you've been recommending dismissal. Place that we agree with, dismiss it. So that is the shortest route right now, unless we decide we want to go to hearing and do that, and it stretches it out. Looking at 30 days, that's 120 days right now.
What we sort of threw out there, Richard, and this is good to have your input, is maybe have someone designated from the commission, and the executive secretary could just call that person and say, hey, this complaint is really nothing. That person could agree. And then, or that commissioner, and then that commissioner would just report that at
The
the
agreement of
meeting.
dismissal, if it's a dismissal.
Yeah,
or
so we have someone volunteer to be the point of
It's not
contact.
just the executive secretary.
Right, and that way, we said we have, the commission kind of backing too. I mean, what do you think there is?
Well, that might expedite it a little bit.
That would,
Because, I hate to say it, but, something like that, you just contact the chair, talk to the chair concurs.
well, that's
What do
fine.
I
I
do?
mean, it could be the chair too, so just, yeah.
I don't
And
know,
then
I mean,
think
that's just as an example.
Okay, yeah, I think, but I mean, we could write that in and make that official.
Group,
Well,
if
that's
the
fine.
commission concurs that they want expedited at the first step, then that's the way to do it. Then you don't have to wait for 30 days to have a, meeting and then have the commission review it. Then after the meeting, you have 30 days
Yeah.
to issue a decision, and then once you issue the decision, then the complainant has another 30 days to.
Well,
decide what-
I hate to kind of jump around. I don't know if it sounds like we're kind of come to some conclusions, but maybe we could talk about some of the calendar days. I went to look this up in the charter to see about if they had any, like these 45 days and stuff in the charter. There's nothing.
Yeah.
No.
out of the chart.
Yeah, so I don't know if this has any statutory or charter base or some city regulation type of backing, but in here in the thing that Dylan did, or the proposal, he uses like 10 days. I mean, obviously this would have to be reviewed anyway, but you know, maybe we could make things like 10 days rather than the 45 days. I mean, so
Yeah, I
it seems
think
like
that's a good
everybody's in
idea.
agreement.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that
think-
seems reasonable.
And right there, I mean, we're speeding up the process quite a lot.
Yeah, I have a question on contested case. I'm just reading this. So you have the hearing. And if somebody doesn't like the sanctions after a hearing conducted pursuant to this subchapter is not satisfied, et cetera, may apply to the commission for contested case. Why? If you have the hearing and you do the whole hearing and the commission issues their determination,
That's their appeal, that's the appeal.
that's the appeal.
Yeah, it
process.
isn't
Okay.
that's based on, like it says, chapter 91.
Okay, then it's a legal thing. Gotcha.
Yeah, because you have a right to appeal. That's-
But then it says within 30 days of getting the commission's 30, so shorten it up to 15 days instead of 30 days.
Well, that may be in the law, but
I
15
don't
days
know.
would be fine. So,
Well,
well,
it's- Yeah. Well, yeah,
But I think Patrick's right. I think there's opportunities there to tighten the timelines. I mean, if somebody's really serious about this, they should be
yeah.
taking it seriously.
Well, especially when they how many days they have to file a complaint. You know, 45 days. And I think, like you said multiple times, you know, by the time all the days come around, people are kind of like, oh, what happened there? I mean, now at least we have videos. But yeah. So, you know, 10 days, if you're really that,
If you're real mad at what happened at a board, you'd be on the phone the next day filing your complaint.
yeah, I can't see someone 40 days out. All that, I've got to file.
Well, actually, people do. They'll call all their friends. They'll ask, it's this long drawn out conversation with all their friends. And then on the last day, they file the complaint.
we've had complaints that didn't qualify because they were beyond 45. So,
Well, it sounds like everybody's on board for those 10 days to make the complaint. Well, 10 days to make the complaint. Is everybody on board there?
I think that's a good idea. That really will tighten up the process.
Okay. So we got-
Sometimes I think the only problem with shortening these kinds of depends on the timing of the calendar and what's happening, holiday, is somebody on vacation, you can reach them, stuff like that. That's the point. Sometimes you have to have practical considerations. You run into, and it can delay the process.
and the worst case scenario is something comes up after 10 days that you didn't know about. And then you say, okay, you know what, if we knew that,
Oh, well, yeah,
But you can also say that 45 days too.
yeah, that's, tell them go ahead.
Just going back, I apologize, Kathleen can't see so well here on this. It's in there, it's on my post-it. Okay, if vexatious complaint
can't see
is on it. So
I don't have your post-it, dude.
that doesn't look
bottom
like
line
a
is,
plan.
it's in there in my binder, but with a note, and a section.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't
Okay, I'm
remember
not
anything
losing my
about
mind.
that.
Okay.
In
thank you.
which basically,
Yes.
because we have all dealt with it.
Yes,
But, and maybe that's what we do is add a section on vexatious complaints where.
Oh, I think so.
You know, I think, because that's really where the problem comes in for you too.
Because there's at least three elements of that. If you look, harassment or egregious nature of the filing complaints or whatever, the abuse of the process, right? I'm just gonna run you through the mill how many ever times I can. Or it's excessive in number. You know, you've said this so many times against every board member or attendee at your meetings, enough for it. So one way or another, vexatious should be dealt with in part of this as well, as a tool for the neighborhood commission and the NCO to also be able, as part of its review, to make one of the recommendations.
does anyone object? I think we're all in it, but then, yes. that-
So I'm
that-
sorry, it's on my post.
Okay, well, now that you've said it,
Well, let me borrow your post.
I think definitely, I think
Give me a
definitely,
bad time.
everybody seems to be on the same page, so.
See what happens to you when you do that?
Okay, so we did, I don't know that we came to a resolution about referring the matter back to the board. Do we-
I really am opposed
I
to
mean,
that.
so you don't,
just really
in all
can't.
cases.
I just, in all cases, I just think
Okay.
I think if you refer back to the chair, that's a conversation between the chair. And frankly, knowing Larry and myself, we'd be on the phone the next day to Lloyd anyway.
If I had to know that, I'd let him know.
Immediately,
The collaboration with the chair and executive
yeah.
secretary, that has to be, because when I know to cover my own six, I let him know before I got him deep.
Yeah.
Going back and said, Larry, you better go back and fix this right now.
I've seen too many instances at board level where there's just this clash of personalities. And I just am afraid that it would just explode it to a point where it was just really uncomfortable. And I don't think those people should be put in that position. They're already upset enough. And then to have people maybe piling on top of them in an open forum like that, I just don't feel that it's appropriate.
Tom was gonna back me up on this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's hope it ends with that. No,
Sorry, Lloyd.
again, I love the idea of putting the burden on the board. You guys, whenever the instigation was in, listening to the whole conversation, I think if you pull back in some respects, you're dealing with this, you're dealing with the chair or whichever other members, you're trying to address the problem, right? You're not sending it to another hearing of whatever kind, okay, whether it takes 5 minutes on the agenda or something else like that. Backing away from that, I got no problem with it because you are trying to address the problem. But I think what's also important somehow, again, not trying to put the N and the A in the middle in any way, but that there is a reporting element to the board, most importantly to the commission, but also to the board in terms of, certain, you start speaking in generalities, you don't need to identify the parties or whatever, but saying something like summarize, whatever, because some of that too, I dare say we could probably quickly come up with five to 10 short statements that cover the majority of situations. And so whatever is reported is so generic, but everybody can kind of nod their head and whatever, right? But at least that way there's an acknowledgement that a complaint or more was filed against the board. It has been researched and resolved or whatever, but it's an acknowledgement to the board as compared to everything only happening way up here at the neighborhood commission level, or whatever. Because as I look at things now, it's almost like you file a complaint and the board itself, I got no responsibility unless I'm called as a party or a witness.
So it puts a level of accountability on the board a little bit when
So-
it comes back to them to hear a
It
summary,
should.
right?
They're not doing a hearing of, something formal that way.
Right,
But at least it is, there were some complaints about the
Right.
last meeting or whatever, that made their way to the neighborhood commission
Right.
office.
right.
you
They
know,
need to
and-
feel that.
Okay,
a little
but-
bit.
had a discussion.
But you run into sunshine then, because if you have this as an action item or on board business, then you have to accept testimony, not just from board members, but from the public. And that's what I'm concerned about, where it turns
Okay,
into this.
before we get to the, reporting it back to the board, because that's another issue.
And I agree, I think the board should be
No, but
involved.
you
But-
raise it.
Let's step back. So instead, in the process what we're talking about, so I don't hear any really good support or a lot of support for sending it back to the board, but maybe in lieu of that, we say board, like a board mediation. You have the chair meet with the two parties. If it's the chair, then it's the vice chair, and that sort of thing, declining order. And so that could be an option in lieu of sending it, on making it an action item on the board level. I mean, does that encapsulate what everybody?
But I don't disagree with what Tom said.
Yeah.
I think sending a letter to all the board members.
Okay, well,
that,
that's a notice
that's
issue, then we can
different.
talk about that.
Yeah. I
Okay,
think-
I just wanted to
I
make
think
sure we
Tom's
were
right
all
about
on.
that, yeah. No, I agree with you. I think that's giving NCO some flexibility, saying, hey, you got this complaint. I'm gonna send it back to you, board chair, to adjudicate.
Like that.
Yeah, and if it's against the chair, then, yeah, like the vice chair could be the person in the middle,
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
And even the reporting, as I listen to you real quick, even the reporting could be, simply a report by the NCO back. After the rest of this discussion, right, a report back, so the public input, if need be, can be under public comment. Can act on it, or we'll take your comments, but it's not being, opening the door.
I disagree with that. Because under public comment, remember, you can't limit, as long as it's not derogatory or et cetera, it's appropriate. But people get passionate if they feel they've been somehow dissed, they're gonna get up there and they're gonna do this. And my fear is that you then turn your board meeting, even under residents' concerns or public comment, into a forum where people feel it's okay. Once you let it happen, everyone else is thinking, oh, I can get up there and say whatever
And
I
say
want.
whatever they want.
Yeah, and that's my only
Well,
concern.
But it's not, it's only if somebody wants to respond to a written report
Yeah.
or pick summary or whatever. Because that risk is there all the
Always, yeah.
Do you have any thoughts about how this should be, whether it should be reported to the whole board or how they do it?
Yeah, I was gonna actually speak a little bit towards that because I've been asked a number of times regarding the decisions that we make, that you make, in terms of a contested case, hearing and all that, and final decision. Is that is the complaint that's filed, is that public? And we have pretty much kept it not public, but I've been told it is really up to the board, up to the commission.
Well, but
And as part of that, we talk about how much, if somebody files a complaint, who knows about it right off the bat? And then that may fuel the fire. Or, yeah, maybe
If
not.
the board deals with it, everything's on the open.
Right.
That should be-
Complaint and all that.
That should be what's there too, because if a board member is concerned about a complaint that was submitted, and they should go to the chair and say, hey, what happened with the results of so-and-so that submitted that complaint? I'm just interested. And the chair should be able to say, that was resolved. This was the issue that came up.
But I guess what I'm asking is, it sounded like what Tom suggested, sort of like a mandatory report. Somebody would report there was a complaint, maybe just outline it generally, but there'd have to be some sort of, well, or do we put in the rule set? There has to be a reporting back to the board.
As far as the complaint form, when they file it, we don't necessarily disclose that. But if somebody asks under, but you gotta give it.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
give it to them.
Yeah, but that's a passive kind of situation as opposed to actively
Active.
doing it each
Right.
time.
And it has crossed my mind that I would just post it.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta tell you, some of that too may discourage people from some of those frivolous complaints, because right now, you never know if
Or
somebody's.
put in courage.
Or it could
That's-
encourage.
that's-
Yeah, that's
No,
right.
I agree. I think it's that way more than discourage, I mean,
Well, I've had people come up and complain about a board member, of the public or something like, I should, and I'm saying, well, you have a right to file a complaint, please. But then they don't want to,
right,
because
they don't, but they don't want, yeah.
their name out there and stuff like that.
There's a consequence that they need
Absolutely,
to
there's
know.
always a
The
consequence.
boards need to feel that consequence.
Yeah.
Instead of just tossing it up and then it comes all up here.
Yeah.
And then it's like that little child that just got off the playground, no consequence. They need to feel
The
something.
question is, if the board's here complaints, the other part of that is, if they make a decision, well, we want to suspend, what authority do we give boards?
Well, I think first off, we pretty much.
You gotta start and look at that together if you toss it.
I don't think it's up to the board to suspend. The board can
Well,
pick somebody up the meeting anyway, but
Yeah.
yeah,
I think
But
at this
they
point,
should have a recommendation to,
Yeah, we've sort of made that choice among the whole committee of not doing that board route, of not referring it back to the whole board.
yeah, I really think that's a bad idea.
Yeah, I think the majority of the committee
how
objected to
would,
that.
how would the board resolve it? It's not the
So-
board,
Board
it's
wouldn't
it's
resolve
the
it.
board chair.
Yeah, we would refer it back to the chair, and if the chair is the subject of the complaint, then the vice chair, like, so it'd be actually
Right.
board
So
level
the
mediation.
board chair for this discussion then would be the one to recommend inaction or discipline or, punishment toward the board member, or would it just be passed to the commission?
it would be-
I would say cost.
Yeah, I envision the recommendation would be tossed to the commission.
If
So-
the board
so
chair can't resolve
What are
it.
we gaining in terms of timing?
Well, I don't think you really, in that situation, gain anything by
Yeah.
timing, but it's more of putting the responsibility / burden.
Right,
Well, they
Back
still
on
have
the
only
board.
10 days.
right.
Yeah, I would think that they would take it up at the next meeting, and whatever they decide would come to the commission, and in the next commission meeting, you get.
So then
Okay, well,
it is
wait,
going
wait,
to
No, we're not
we didn't-
taking it
we
up
didn't
at a
take it.
meeting.
Yeah, that
That's
was,
We don't want to do it at a meeting. We don't want to take it up. What we're saying
Right.
though is the board itself should be informed if a complaint has been filed against either the board or the chair by the public or another board member. They should at least be aware of that. Because most of the time, boards don't know that. Most boards don't know that.
Yeah, and I can just see the meeting going, okay, we're talking about this, but we should be careful because somebody filed a complaint. I won't say who, but somebody was upset about this and.
Well, that's why I just say you
He's
just
sitting at
send
the
a
end of the
letter.
table here, but won't say who it is. I mean, the point is that we gotta delete this after we can. But sometimes people get very child,
Yeah,
and that's what we have. That's what gives
But
us.
I'm with Maher, if somebody files a complaint, then it's a public process, you can get it through a 92 out. That person has to understand that there is, as you said, a consequence, that the entire board will be informed that you have filed a complaint, just letting you know that.
And for some people that file a complaint, I don't think they care. I think that's fine.
And that's okay, if they don't
Yeah.
care, that's fine,
Yeah.
that's okay, you're not gonna stop them, you're right, Lloyd. Somebody who's determined is not gonna be stopped.
And and that's a good segue from what I was thinking about at some point, is that a lot of these things needs to be public or should be public, or at least considered to be public.
I agree.
okay,
Yeah.
well, before we get to that discussion, let's finish
It's
this
not run down.
formulation of our idea. So are we in agreement there needs to be some kind of notice? And then what does that notice entail? Like, we don't use the individual's names. It's just a very basic summary, what the complaint was and what the resolution was at the board level, or whether, and then that may mean it's referred to the commission. That would be a part of it. Is everybody on board with
I
that?
think that if we don't talk about what authority the chair said, I can see churches saying, okay, let's toss it to the commission.
I mean, they could.
yeah.
They could.
Well, what's gonna happen is your
If they don't have any authority to do it,
your newer board chairs are the ones that could toss that back because they don't have the skill set to be able to handle it. So they go to Lloyd, Lloyd, can you take care of this? Because I can't get these two guys to talk.
And maybe that's when you choose the other mediation where you have someone who's in your office or whoever you pick, who's a little bit more adroit, let's say, at doing this type thing.
And it may be automatic because the chair is the one that's one of the board members wants to complain against the chair.
resolution.
Well, yeah, that's part of the challenge in terms of the complaint and trying to describe it in the general terms. If someone says, I was denied the right to speak. Well, who denied it? It's only the chair.
We already got 9 of those already.
Yeah. Anyway,
Okay, well, we should come with the decision. We gotta come with a crystallized proposal. Doesn't have to be.
okay, so maybe the first thing is all the complaints come again to the NCO and the executive secretary.
Yeah, we have that.
We have that part.
It's the
And from
notice now
there-
that we're kind of trying.
Right,
to,
and from there, we have 4 options or 3 options.
Yeah, so we've got all that, I
We got
think, pretty
that.
much set. It's just a matter of, okay, when we've talked about an option of throwing it back to the board, which would be the chair, meeting whoever the complainants are.
And a timeline to go with it.
I think the timeline have, we can talk about timelines. But anyway, this is the project, this is what I think we agreed to. If we didn't, then someone chime up. And then the second part is the notice aspect. And what I'm hearing is everybody wants to tell the board. So the question is, what does that look like? Just a brief summary? Don't use names. I mean, obviously, if someone wants to find out, they could come back to the
Mhm.
NCO
And
get
get
it.
more
But we're
detail.
just talking about what the plan would say of this is what a report would look like back to your board based upon the complaint.
Mhm.
Is everybody in agreement with that? Okay. So as far as the timeline, I don't know, is 10 days?
You know
Good
what would
enough
be
for that?
helpful?
Then it's 45 days is too long.
That's too
Well, I'm not
30 days.
suggesting 45 days, but when you have board people.
10 days is reasonable.
I think 10 days is.
So we're talking 10
Yeah,
working days or 10 days?
And
Calendar days.
working days, not, I
10
mean,
working
working days is different, because then you're talking 14 days.
Then you're talking 2 weeks.
Okay, so
Fair enough,
it
but
would
that's a
be,
good point.
it would be 10 days to make the complaint, and then 10 days for the parties, the chair to.
So
use
what would be
that.
helpful to me, I know the 45 day one, that's way too long, but you know, what are the other days, like you have 30 days? I'd like to know what of these are statutory that we can't change because they're codified in the HRS, or where do we have
I think the
flexibility?
only thing that, maybe the only thing that's codified is a appeal process.
Yeah, contested, that's what
Contested case.
I
I
would,
just think wherever we can shorten it.
Yeah.
We should shorten it, and I think 10 working days is a good, I feel comfortable
Okay.
with that.
Working days, not calendar days, working days.
Working days.
Working
Okay.
yeah,
days.
because that'll be 2 weeks.
Because then
Some
again,
circumstances.
but then that also addresses what Richard was saying about, you know, stuff pops up, you kind of
Right.
get that little squishy extra
No,
day.
it's-
Yeah, it'll happen no matter what.
Let's,
Couple
Tom.
comments. To try to answer Kathy's question as to, you know, why are those days the way they are and stuff like that. For the work that we did years ago, it really ended up in essence largely mirroring the Chapter 91 process. And our continued aggravation today is still, you know what, you go through the whole thing, and then you got a chance to do the whole thing one more time.
Again.
So my encouragement here with our discussion is, you know what? For the moment, just set all of that aside. Try to do a very speedy process here so that in essence, if you have, I'll just say the example this way. If you have the board meeting on day 1 of the month, then by the next, so let's just say 30 days later, you've done whatever it takes to be able to at least provide, hopefully, some response to the board or whatever in terms of this little report. Okay, that's all I'll call it. But it's not a matter of putting a hearing or something necessarily on the agenda. So you've still got more play. Otherwise, on the back end, you're shortening your time because you got at least 7 days that you got to cut off prior to the meeting to get the agenda out and all that. But if you go 10 days for whatever, okay, making the complaint, trying to address the complaint within that period of time or whatever, you want to, I think you want to try to see what can we say to make it fit within 30 days. So between meeting 1 and meeting 2, but there's still a lot of moving parts. And especially when you say, I got 33 boards to deal with. What if all of them get active in this? You know, I'm agitated here, you know, and you're just kind of going, wait, you're going to swamp the NCO. Who's monitoring, who's managing the, let me just call it mediation effort in some of these situations to try to get some responsiveness. So, Chair, I'm thinking even whatever I said originally about providing some report to the board as to what was done, whatever, you know, that can be done either directly, but I'm even more comfortable saying that may not, in many circumstances, need to be too prompt. And in fact, in order to inform all the chairs, kind of think of the council of chairs idea, to inform the chairs throughout the system as to kind of here's what's going on, then maybe some of the things end up being a quarterly report that we're getting a lot of aggravation based on, you know, uncivil conduct from the audience or, I mean, whatever. So you're addressing individual complaints, but you're also providing kind of a
We're not to put that in
response,
the rule,
whatever.
in terms of reporting to the chairs. We don't have to put that in the rules.
In the rule.
Yeah, in these
the
rules, we don't have to put the reporting to the chair, the council.
No, that's absolutely. I totally agree. That can be
Okay,
kind of an
well,
office procedure.
Then if we're not putting it in the rules, then we
Yeah.
don't need to talk. Just give that as an idea to you know, to Lloyd at the moment. Anyway, I'm sorry, that's.
No, but it actually reduces some of that potential friction of, I don't feel I had the opportunity to address the problem if I were in the public or I was the complainant.
Yeah, because if you report it to the board, they're gonna ask what happened.
Yeah. I
And
wanna
they're gonna
know-
ask, how did you resolve the
It may
complaint?
get complicated.
No, because if it was between a member and the chair or between a member and another member, you're gonna wanna know, how did you resolve? Was there any penalty or was there no penalty? Was it dismissed? You know, on and on and on. You're gonna get questioned about it if you don't tell them flat out, this is what happened.
So now what I'm hearing is we're not gonna put it in rules. We'll just figure this out separately.
And I'm fine with that. The other thing about shortening the process though, how many times do we hear from people who file complaints that they don't hear back or they don't know what's going on? So this is actually a benefit to people.
And part of it is just the length of time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So this I see is a benefit to people who are in the process and want to know what's going on. So
Yeah, just as an FYI, when somebody files a complaint, then we go to the person that was filed against and we say, this is the complaint. They have 45 days to respond.
see, I think it should.
They
be
respond
short
on the
release.
44th day.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
great.
it's shortened.
10 days.
Anyway.
10 working
Yeah, we
days.
hear 10
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, so let me ask, just to clarify, if this is referred to the board, what are the possible outcomes? Either the chair, I mean, are we contacting the chair to manage?
I think it's, well,
Because I mean, this is going to be put in the rules as far as that was my thought. So we got to come up with some kind of procedure to do this.
I envisioned it just if there's a complaint filed and it goes back to the board, then it just goes on the agenda, complaint was filed on this. And if the board recommends whatever.
Can we say that the executive secretary has the option to send it? Leave it flexible for you, depending on what type of complaint it was?
Yeah.
Well,
Because again, remember, if the complaint's against the chair, you're not gonna send it to the chair.
well, it is, it's one of
I
the
think they
options.
would like that.
But,
Um,
I mean, I don't know. I wonder if you can leave that just vague. But you know, people are going to say, okay, well, what's the process here? Like, what if they don't, you know, they want an appeal process? Do they have to go through that contested case thing? Or, I mean, they've got to have some appeal. Like if you have some sort of mediation, you got to have some sort of appeal back to the commission, say, you know, hey, I'm the complainant. This was not resolved in the way that I wanted it to. So there's got to be some procedure there. And that may be it. It may just be, you know, the complainant can.
well, I think
appeal.
it would, if it ran a certain course, it would go for the board and the board would tell the commission, we cannot resolve this at the board level. You guys got to decide.
Okay,
Fine.
well, instead of, and in this situation, it would just be the chair.
Maybe the chair calling you to say,
Okay,
I tried to talk to the individual,
Right.
it didn't work,
Yeah.
and he wants to talk to you.
and then it would just go back into that option process and you could have someone else do the mediation or, you know, it just eliminate the send
What
it to
if
the
you
board
just
option.
say that the executive secretary has these options available
I think,
in expediting a complaint when it's
Yes.
filed? And then it's up to you, say, I'm gonna call Larry, you know, Larry knows what's going on. And then maybe it's solved that way,
Yeah, and
or
he
it
does have
goes
that.
to mediation, or it goes to the commission.
Right.
or-
Remember, if you have mediation, I would have a question, for example, Lloyd, or any of your folks or staff trained in mediation.
Yeah, see, I get away from using that language, but that's basically what we're talking about. You know, I would probably say a conference, you know, with the
Well,
complainant.
because if we say mediation, then my idea of mediation is that you have to have somebody that knows.
No, I
Oh,
totally
yeah.
agree.
I
Mediation, we hear
Right.
you.
And that's
Not
why,
just Go have a conference.
Right.
Talk it over.
and that's-
Mediation is very specific, I think, in terms of,
In terms of the legal sense.
mediator.
well, I mean, in terms of how they go about doing it.
Yeah.
yeah, so
As
I
a
think we
process.
just in the document, it would be a conference or something like that, you know, with the interested parties, that sort of thing.
Or a meeting, call it a meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean.
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, because there is no consistency. You just say it's a conference.
Yeah.
You can have any kind of meeting and talk about it. Who knows what the outcome will be?
Well,
Because in a mediation or a conference, there is no requirement that the parties reach agreement. on any outcome.
Agree to disagree.
What's that? A conference?
No, I mean,
Okay,
I'm just saying
mediation?
in this situation, we could just say, I mean, I didn't mean it as like.
We just say conference chair as also an option to bring the vice chair in.
Well, whoever,
to sit,
I mean,
to
what I'm
see
saying is
what
that
the Situation.
the parties in a conference, if you call it that, or a meeting, or a mediation, there is no requirement, as I understand mediation, and having a meeting anytime, that you have to reach an agreement. You could
The
say,
bottom line
I
is
disagree, I don't
it
want
is
to
a
do that.
mediation.
I'm not agreeable. Because it's, the parties getting together to see if they can agree to some resolution.
Okay, so yeah, and the question is if they don't agree to a resolution, then it would be kicked back to the
Then-
executive secretary.
Yeah.
And then the process would go, it'd just be eliminate that option. you know?
Because, yeah, you're right, the definition is a negotiation to resolve the differences is conducted by some impartial party.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Which is in theory what it's supposed to be, but yeah, I would agree not to get away from technical language.
you call it intervention? But now I'm looking at Senate. you know,
Gonna have
it's
it.
not-
So, I think we've, gone through a lot and here's something else. Bring up and I forget.
Oh, no.
So,
This is not easy.
yeah, that's what I my red notes. I didn't have my blue pen ran out of ink. That's why it's all red. Okay, so I think we've talked about it. I think we've raised, or we've gotten to consensus. Hopefully we have good audio, because that's what I use to get all my, kind of collapse it all together. Maybe I can reach out to Dylan and we can start, putting together a more,
Right.
something substantial, substantive on paper that we can then, rather than try to get all these ideas put together, and that way we can kind of just really get moving on the process.
Yeah, no, I think it's great because the one thing we walk away with is not gonna be the same.
Exactly.
Right? And that's
That's
good.
what you want.
That's really
That's what
good.
you want.
Yeah.
But you know, they still have mediation center.
Yeah, they
Where
do.
they do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that could be one way to do this is, rather than have the commission office to just say that they're referred to that
I
mediation.
don't recommend it.
Huh?
I don't,
I can, what?
I don't recommend using the city's big mediation center.
Is it city?
Yes.
Is it free? You
Well,
gotta pay
that's
it's a
private
free-
too.
Is that like what the courts do when they have, like domestic cases?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
but
you
that's-
gotta pay.
Yeah,
That's like
yeah,
a
that's
judge.
getting
That's
a
what I mean,
little,
but
Yeah, that's.
I wonder if that's getting, because what we're
I
really
don't know.
talking about here initially is a sit down, with hopefully with the
Yeah.
chair, the aggrieved parties, and try and work something out, just kind of say, okay, guys, tell me what your concerns are, what do you feel? And hopefully everyone then walks away and says, okay, I feel better, thank you for listening to me. But I hear what you're saying, Richard, about mediation has a very term about it, so maybe it's just, where the NCO would say, ask the chair to set the meeting with the aggrieved parties, unless of course it's the chair, the vice chair. But I think you start simple and they get increasingly complex as you move forward through the process.
Okay.
That's what I would recommend, and then you just outline it, bullet points or ABC, whatever outline.
Which is fine. I think if we put it in here.
Yeah.
Because from my local background, I'd say, okay, so the executive secretary goes down there and sees if he can fix it.
Yeah,
And if you can't fix it, then you do this,
yeah,
right?
exactly,
Basically.
exactly.
And unfortunately, the way the plan is written out is like you file a complaint and it goes through this.
And then the
it's
other thing is
automatic.
shorten the timelines, as we talked about, down to 10 working days across the board,
We should
wherever
make it
we
as
can
simple as-
legally.
The chair, it's a chair, and the complainant, have a meeting, talk or discuss the complaint
Yeah.
and see if they can reach a resolution. Simple as that.
Right.
Does have to be in person. They can do it on the phone.
Or virtual, or however they
Oh,
want, exactly.
And that's, that's what we.
And then the chair
Exactly.
reports back to the commission if it was resolved or not. If it's not, then yeah, just,
Then you escalate to the
Yeah,
next
you
level.
escalate to the next-
Yeah,
so if you don't make it that difficult.
Right,
Or
exactly,
formal,
right,
make it really informal, so
right.
you can resolve it at the first level.
We just say top story.
Yeah, but the chair needs, there has to be a paper trail on this thing. Chair needs to provide that report in writing to Lloyd.
It could be an email, it could just be, hey,
Yeah.
I met with someone,
Yeah.
so.
You didn't resolve it.
You just gotta have a
Yeah.
paper trail.
Yeah,
Exactly, that's
well,
all.
there's gotta be something, because you got the complaint hanging out there, so there's gotta be. Yeah, even if it's,
I mean, Lloyd, does that make sense to you? Does that feel like it could help you guys? I mean, you're the ones that have to live
I
with
mean,
it.
it's an option to do.
You know, the part of the challenge is that we have so much written down. And you know that as soon as you do something, it starts ticking, right? It's just, you know, you got this, you got this, you got, you know, so. And there was never in the plan, which is really difficult to write, is that if there's a complaint, then you should go and talk to the guy and see if they can resolve it. You know, I mean, it's a very simple thing, but at some point, if you can't, then okay, then we go into the process.
I'm optimistic that once this thing,
And I like that.
these
I
big
like what you
changes,
just said.
I think things are gonna get a lot better for us.
Hey,
Well,
Because these things won't fester.
it doesn't work.
doesn't
The
work.
thing is,
Education and training.
you're formalizing things that could already happen.
Mm.
You know,
I know, and it's.
a chair can just follow up the person and say, what's the
I
problem?
know.
Yeah,
I
But if
know,
they
but
don't, then,
sometimes-
you know, you have
Yeah.
the festering of the
Yeah,
problem.
but see, I do it right after my.
Sometimes-
Well, that's what I.
That's.
I know, I
that's
just, my, I
But
just,
everything's
like
fresh.
you, I.
Everything's
just
fresh.
went away.
But I think Tom's suggestion is you put it in the other parts of the plan of this is part of your responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
which
think
also
that's
then
good.
it doesn't necessarily become. part of
And
the
that way-
process, but it's what you're
That way
supposed
they
to do.
know and they can't really skirt around it.
Yeah.
I did have a thought about, where it talks about, the, certified mail.
Yeah.
And I forgot exactly where that is. Wow, I did it somewhere. But anyway, what I was thinking is in the proposal, it said preferably email.
Yeah.
I don't know that that really
I
actually
can tell you what
kind
page
of
it
works.
is.
Okay. Well, anyway, maybe what we could say, and I've had this in other cases, is when you're a board member, you're responsible for providing an address to the neighborhood commission. If you move, you're responsible for updating that. So maybe we just say a letter, you know, why it doesn't need to be certified. I mean, and I don't know. I mean, I think that basically, I don't know. So, I mean, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I thought the letter would be fine. It's just that we know if we send the letter out, then they're not gonna get it for 3 days, right?
Yeah.
And then they got a response time. And what happens sometimes is that the address we have even on file is no good.
Well, but that's where you put the burden on. you know,
Yeah, they gotta take some
Can't
responsibility.
you send the letter? You can
The
send a
certified
physical
mail.
letter, but
And
the other
then
thing is
e-
sending a copy of that letter in the email.
Email.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
And I
that's
think
what
it's
I
more
was
than
gonna-
one way, yeah. I think if we go, we just didn't like the certified mail because it costs us $10 every time.
Yeah.
I mean, and if he decides to file a complaint against 5 guys, then it's
That's a lot of
$50
money.
went out the door.
Yeah.
And then we send it to people and then they're not home, they don't take it, or they don't or they refuse to sign for it.
Or if
Yeah,
they
we-
went to my spam to claim that.
Well,
Well, and that's what I'm
well,
a
the
little.
point is, if we go, yeah,
I
if
mean,
we
we could do mail, basic mail.
mail and email.
Email.
We
And,
do both.
I mean, yeah, at some point, people have to take personal responsibility. I hate to think, yeah, someone would be, notified, but
And a copy to the chair. Because the chair will make sure that the board member got the email.
Some chairs.
Maybe.
Well,
If it's filed against the chair, maybe not.
that's true.
you're right.
Well, I'll tell you what, why don't we just leave it at that and I'll just make sure my office will make every effort to get it. Even if we have to call them and say, listen, we got this complaint. So,
Yeah, I mean, maybe a phone call. But you know, some people don't set up their email. My kids. Anyway, because they want to talk to me, I guess. Tom,
Old school.
I appreciate the scope of the conversation here. I want to get back to just one thing that perhaps can be written because I think we've missed this in the forms, in our usual way of keeping this so formal. And that is to make sure that we include in what we write, as well as in our personal operating procedure of including as a first step or whatever, let's say this is the point of complaint intake or whatever, please identify the efforts that you've taken, or if any, to address or approach the chair.
Yeah,
Never
that would
mind
be
my
more
bad language.
operational.
Yeah.
But identify or asking as part of that intake, have you even tried to talk to the person?
Mm.
Because a lot of
Yeah.
folks don't, I'm upset with you, but I ain't gonna talk to you. I'm taking it downtown because I can cause you some grief. Okay, so part of this is placing the burden on the complainant as well to say, how did you, or have you taken any steps to address?
But I agree with Patrick, that's really operational, and then,
Yeah.
I mean, that's an operation.
Yeah, that's my.
I agree with you.
But yeah.
Well, but in the, how we describe what should be part of the complaint or what's gonna be, considered there, because we talk about witnesses and exhibits and whatever.
Okay, now I got it. So what you're saying is that here's a complaint form, this is your complaint, and by the way, did you try and address it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, well, so that just
Yeah.
updated
Did you
your
talk to
form
the chair?
now.
Did you write
Yeah.
an email? Did you?
Yeah, because otherwise I can hide a complaint and say, I don't
Right.
have to approach it, I go, it's
Yeah.
gonna cause some grief.
I mean, when you talk about witnesses and evidence, especially evidentiary standards, that's different, that you do put that in the rules, but I think in this case, yeah, that sounds.
But
It'd be nice to at least have that.
Yeah.
And so at least you got one person saying, yeah, I made every attempt to, or I did talk with him,
I
or
think that's
whatever.
good. Yeah, that's good.
Because how many of us immediately respond to something? If you told me, I didn't know you're upset, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Right, I didn't perceive that at all. Now that you brought it to my attention, I'd be happy to address the other member, or, I'm sorry, I didn't know I was doing that. Now that I'm aware, I'll change what I do.
Yeah,
Well, that's a good one.
Thank
That'd be a good addition. to the
I
Um,
like that.
Are there any other thoughts anyone wants to add? With that, we have a lot of kind of information, so hopefully we can start putting it on paper.
We all feel good. We making a good positive change to the
I
process.
think so. I mean, yeah, and it's kind of interesting just doing this free will discussion because it elicits ideas and we can actually transform that into policy. So
Yeah.
thank you, everybody. Is that it? Any announcements? I guess our next meeting is the week before the NCO. We're transitioning back to that, which is probably, I don't know.
March 10th?
No,
Which
it
is
would
the
be the
Monday?
third Monday of the month, wouldn't it? Is it
No,
the fourth
right,
Monday?
it's- You always have it this, is it the third?
Well, that's what we were doing before the
let
new
me see what I
year.
have.
Third.
I mean, is everybody comfortable with that?
I'm unavailable on the second Monday, which is March 10th.
Okay, so the 17th.
Oh, yeah, you're right, I have it on the third one, you're right. We
Okay.
just changed this one, this was the exception to
So is
the,
everybody okay? All right, at least
17th, right?
yeah,
So
I'm
we're doing the
good.
17th. Okay, so we will have our meeting on the 17th. Any other announcements?
Nope.
Hearing none, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Fabulous, Patrick, fabulous meeting.
I'm sorry, so back to Tuesday.
No,
Monday.